Check Complete, a referee podcast, is an educational resource for referees by referees, designed to connect and develop soccer officials of all ages and skill levels to better serve the game both on and off the field. A very warm welcome to episode number 24 of the Check Complete podcast. We are in red, and unapologetically in Kansas City, we are celebrating a Chiefs AFC Championship win over the Cincinnati Bengals. That happened just an hour ago, so we are filming this post-game. So we're still riding high. I decided not to change, so if you're not a Chiefs fan, well, suck it. But episode 24 is upon us. We are excited. We got some great content for you in this episode. We'll get to this guy in just a second. He's co-hosting with us today. Should be a familiar face to friends of the podcast. We also have another segment, Motivation Identity, in our Coffee and Christina segment. And then staying with the Christina trend, we have Christina Unkel, who is joining us, former FIFA referee, Florida SRA, and a football laws analyst that you might see on TV and on the Twitters and all the other social medias. Mm-hmm. She's incredible. So you will really, I know you'll really enjoy the interview with her. We'll get to all of that very shortly, but Tony Sobolevsky, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yes, we thought we'd check back in with you. You just got back from a trip, but before we get there, let's just recap a little bit. As one of the things we love to be able to do is to help tell stories of referees along their journey. And with us being Kansas referees, we often get a chance to see our Kansas referees succeeding, and so we love telling those stories and hope that those might be inspiring to those of you all along the journey, wherever you're at as a referee. So Tony, we saw you earlier in season 1 of our podcast, and now we're checking back in with you on episode 24 because we've had some updates.
Yeah,
we've had some fun things that have happened. So, so we had our fall 2022 season that wrapped up for you towards middle of November.
Yeah, mid-November, yep.
Right. So we had some on the high school side and on the collegiate side. We had some fun things going on the high school side. You and I both actually were. I don't like self-promotion, but we were selected by the Kansas High School Soccer Coaches Association as the top referees in the state. So that was super exciting.
Amazing,
For you, this was your first season with Keisha, right?
Exactly, yeah, first year.
So Keisha is, for those at home that don't know Keisha, which I wouldn't blame you, but KSHSAA, Kansas State High School Activities Association. And so the high school soccer coaches, they vote in Kansas. They vote on the players' first, second, third team and coaches as well. But then they also built in, 4 or 5 years ago, a referee component where they vote in referees. And so we've had a referee crew at the end of each season. So you were on that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's wonderful. So that was a great year for you in high school. And then on the collegiate side, you also were able to work some postseason, correct?
Yeah, got to do my first college season and then postseason as well for the second round of nationals.
That's right. So this was the very first year working collegiate soccer. We brought you into our Kansas City chapter. And the Kansas City chapter recognized your efforts, did they not?
They did. I appreciate that for everyone who voted, and it meant a lot. So the hard work paid off.
For what?
I got the Rookie of the Year for the KCISOA, we call it, or Kansas City Intercollegiate Soccer Association.
That's right.
Chapter. So for the chapter, I appreciate everyone who voted, and it was a long season, I'll tell you that. But I enjoyed every single game, meeting every single referee, getting to make meaningful connections not only with referees but coaches, some players, and yeah, had a great time. So
it's great.
It was great.
Well, we're very proud of you. That's awesome. Then you were working on something on the USSF side, and that has come to fruition as of the completion of your test and attendance to the Advanced Referee Clinic in Kansas. What was that?
I'm the new Kansas regional referee.
Newest regional referee in the state of Kansas. That's right. So we're very proud of Anthony for that. And you, with your brand spanking new badge and 3 other Kansas referees, just got back from a trip. Where'd you guys go?
Yeah. So as you can see, we went to a National League event in Mesa, Arizona. So National League and E64. It was a great time. Got to go with myself and with Lucas Quijilo, Scott Wyman, and Logan Clark. Logan's been on the podcast before, might be a familiar name, but 3 young studs, young bucks who worked their tail off, love them as my brothers. It was great to get to know them even more on this trip. Thanks to you and our SRA, Bill Davey from the state of Kansas, we got some financial help to fly us out and get us out there, and we got some amazing exposure. It was 18 games and 6 days, so the grind was real, but we got some, we got 3 games a day. It was definitely a grind, and we had a great time. We learned a lot. The first 3 days was the girls' event, and the next 3 days was the boys' event. And so basically it was wake up basically every day at 6 a.m., if not earlier. We had to get there an hour before our game started, and then we had either 2 and a break and then ref as a referee, or you had your referee first and you were AR for 2 games. So it definitely was just basically wake up, eat, referee, eat, sleep, and repeat. No other time for other activities, unfortunately, but beautiful weather. Got some sun, a little chilly, but felt great out there. And yeah, got to get seen by some national referee coaches, and we all got really good feedback. So I thought we represented the state of Kansas well.
Absolutely. And you got to see a lot of friends from around the country, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, shout out to anyone who's watching. Take it. That's the mentality. We go out there, we take it, we make the most of every single game. And so, yeah, hello to all my friends that I got to see not only at Nationals, but in Mesa, Arizona as well.
So it's exciting you get a chance to do events like this. There's events like this that are happening more and more frequently. So if you're watching, reach out to your state referee committees, local assigners, veteran officials in your area if you'd like to do some of these things. You might not be ready for it. You might be past ready for it and should be going. Who knows? But these are things that are fun events, but they're also great opportunities for you to develop your skills, grow your network, be seen by folks that can help progress your career, and really continue to take refereeing to that next level for you, which I would say is probably part of your experience, right?
Yeah,
in these events.
I completely agree. It helped me not only network, but develop more skills, because you see other referees from from around the country, from other states. So you kind of, each crew is different. You're not with the same crew for all 3 games. So you're learning different styles, different techniques on how to manage players, and then you're also able to help each other out. Like I was able to help some grassroots referees, and I'm always learning even as a regional with the new badge, I'm always learning from either, any level. I've always loved taking feedback and just learning and getting better. That's what it's all about. So no matter what level you're at, I think you should get out there if you can afford it, and if you can get some help from your state, reach out and try to get out there to National League events all across the country. There's one in Greensboro, I believe, coming up later, and then also in Tampa. So see if it's not too late to apply. Otherwise, keep your eye on those. And yeah, it's all about networking and getting better. So there's great events to do that.
Absolutely. So with your new badge, exciting opportunities lie ahead for 2023. Potentially would love to have your eyes back on another trip to U.S. Youth Nationals.
Yep, that's the goal.
More opportunities at the amateur adult level as well. Kansas high school girls soccer starting up in the spring.
Can't wait.
Lots of opportunities to referee. So we look forward to seeing you continue to succeed and pursue your goals with that.
Thank you, yeah.
And hope this is just another opportunity for you to be inspired. We would love to... There's so many. We would never be able to tell this many stories. But as we try to tell Tony's story, as well as many others, and hopefully we get to tell yours at some point as well. But take this as encouragement and continue to work, continue to develop your networking and your local community, your support system. Develop those things in your area and be part of it growing and stretching yourself, challenging yourself for what's next. So keep up the good work, Tony. We're excited and proud of you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So we're going to transition now, after these words from JF Consulting, to our second to last segment of Coffee with Christina, talking about motivation and identity. The Check Complete podcast is brought to you in part by JF Consulting Tax Preparation and Bookkeeping. Taxes suck, we can help. Coffee with Christina is back with another episode. Last week we talked about self-talk. This week we're going to talk about the role of motivation and identity.
Yeah.
This is going to be juicy, isn't it?
Juicy.
Real juicy.
To me, this is the foundation of everything that, whether you're a performer, you're a parent, whatever it is you find yourself doing, you have to know who you are and why you're doing it versus what you do impacting what you think about yourself.
Right. So who you are, why you do it. Right. Okay. So this sounds very. This sounds like it starts outside of sport.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get a little sciencey on you just for a second.
Please do, I'm ready.
Okay, so there's a theory called the self-determination theory, and it is that there are basic psychological needs that every single person needs to have met in their life in order to feel motivated to do whatever it is they're doing. So you have autonomy, the ability to make decisions for yourself. You have connectedness, socially, right? Making sure you're connected with those around you. And then you have competence. So what I am doing, I'm good at, or I know what my strengths are. And so obviously that's really easy to then connect into sport. So what you find is programs, careers, things that you're doing where those needs are not being met. You see people not having the motivation to do the work, or they're only motivated by external things, right? Like you're driving these reward-driven programs, and the moment the reward runs out, they're not motivated to do it anymore, right? So if you can be rooted in, you know who you are because those needs are then being met. I know who I am, I know why I'm doing it, and now I can do it for those reasons internally versus, I doubt many officials are doing it for the glory and fame of what you get at the end of a game. So it's important for those drivers to be in place so you can get up the next day and want to do it regardless of how your performance was the day before.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think the performance and the feedback that we receive can really drive self-talk about, or just self-perception, like how do I perceive myself and what kind of a person I am. I mean, that's, especially when you take pride in what you do, right?
Right.
I mean, if I really am doing something, and I think that's the fear. I remember I had a professor in college. This is going to be real vulnerable, but I had a professor in college that, like, he noticed that in class that he was like, I don't feel like, he set me down, and this was one of the best conversations I had. He's like, I don't feel like you're giving your best in what you're doing here. And I think it's because, and he was spot on. He was like, and we got to this after several weeks of, and he had a counseling background, so he knew what he was doing.
Don't you love those?
I know.
Come at you from a different angle, but.
Yeah, swimming in my brain. I mean, it was, so, but he's like, I think that, is there he kind of posed more as a question, but he knew the answer, I think. But it was like, if you gave your all and it didn't go well, then you're like, well, crap, that was my all.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's times where you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go into the game and I have some built-in excuses. That way, if this game goes south, it's like, well, I didn't really get that good a sleep last night. You know, I had 2 Big Macs 20 minutes before.
Not just one.
Not just my normal one.
Plus fries.
Plus fries. Yeah, there's dipping it in a chocolate milkshake, which you haven't done that, you're missing out. But not pregame. But you know, if you have kind of these built-in things that, because then it's like, if I gave 100% to this and it goes south,
right?
What the heck do I do? Right?
Yeah. So you have the psychological needs that need to be met in any group setting. So those are easy to recognize if you're in a group setting and like you have no say, right? So autonomy is really important there. If you're not connected with those. So it's one thing to not know the crew you're working with as officials. It's another thing to not know any other official that you're ever going to work with, right? So if you have a level of connectedness and then one game it's new people, that's not going to throw the whole career into question.
Right.
But at the same time, if you don't have a way of feeling connected in any way, there's that lacking piece to where you probably don't want to go because you don't know anyone, right?
Yes.
It's as basic as that. And then competence, if you have no idea what you're good at or you're not provided the opportunity to get better, the motivation is lacking. But on the other side is the identity piece and an unhealthy, we call it an athletic identity. So officials, I think it's the same thing. If it's unhealthy, it's what I do dictates who I am. What I do dictates my worth.
Yes.
And how well I do it dictates my worth. And so it's found, and I'm sure this is not surprising at all, but athletes that have an unhealthy athletic identity have a harder time in career transitions when they graduate from college and they don't go on to play at the professional level. If they get injured, a career-ending injury, they have a harder time processing that because what they did was who they were. So finding ways to create an identity outside of what you do, and that includes have, I mean, it's as basic as having hobbies, having interests outside of officiating, which I'm sure everyone that you work with does. And so those pieces connect then with, when you're connecting with others, don't just talk about the last game. Talk about where you're going to go eat after and what you're going to go do together, and creating a level of Gordie is more than the official that I work with on Saturday mornings. And that helps create for you, they see me as more than that, so I am not what I do. So those two pieces together really helps that motivation, especially when things aren't going well, or when they are, you're not only seeking the rewards or being able to move up or whatever that looks like.
Well, I think to go back to the connected, there's so much in there that's so freaking good. The connectedness piece, I think for what we're trying to do in Kansas, I think about, for me, it's creating a community and creating a sense of belonging in that community. And I've always had the theory of, if I feel like I belong, that's going to increase my performance.
Yes.
And so now to know that that's supported by science, or at least you, which is enough for me.
You can Google it. It's not mine.
You can Google it. Yeah. No, that's huge. So honestly, like if you're watching this in a place where you're in any sort of leadership position, creating space for community is huge. Like we talk about just getting people together for things, that aren't even soccer related, right?
Well, and that's why Zoom happy hours were so big when COVID first began, is because that lack of connectedness immediately hit. But then not only in leadership should you create those connection pieces, but give someone a little bit of say in what they're doing. And so maybe it's even combining the two. Let them have a say where you guys go and do something. Let them have a say in what time it starts, right? So it's not just spoon-fed to them all the time. There's a level of ownership that builds that level of motivation and desire to say in something.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really good stuff there. We could talk, there's like several things I feel like we could
Forever
and ever. But some really good stuff, especially for those that, again, take pride in your work, but understanding the necessary barriers and boundaries, I should say, not barriers, but better said boundaries, for you to be successful, to not burn out, to continue to push forward, to make space for learning and improving and understanding when things don't go right. That's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Coffee with Christina, another successful segment. The Check Complete podcast is brought to you in part by JF Consulting Tax Preparation and Bookkeeping. Taxes suck, we can help.
Well, I am thrilled to have the opportunity to sit down with Christina Unkel to talk about, talk about a lot of things. We've got a ton of stuff that we're going to chat through today. The first of which, before we get into that, Christina, just thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate you carving out space for this.
Yeah, no problem for having me. I love the name of the podcast. I love what you guys have done, and it's kind of in line with things that I believe in as well. But the name's great. I've tried to explain to a lot of people in the football world what that means in the first place.
Yes, exactly. Very good. Well, thank you. So let's dive right into this and hear a little bit about your story. As we've chatted before we started recording, it's fun to hear folks all along the journey about how they got started, where they are today. But let's go back to that beginning phase. How did you get started? What were those beginning years? What did that look like? And what kept you coming back? That's the kind of the threefold question there, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I'll take the threefold question. And I think it's kind of where everyone starts at, right? So I started officiating back 1999. You were able to start at 10 years old. So I started officiating at 10 years old, but the only reason, and I think I've told this story before, the only reason that prompted me to officiate was I was yelling at the referees who were in my games, who, yes, we were U9 girls, and they were just going through the motions and not caring. And it was very, very evident to me that they didn't care, right? There was no effort being put in. Like, it wasn't that they were just trying and getting the calls wrong. They were just not caring. So I would get on them, right? You're official, you're refereeing my game, right? You're getting paid to do this, like, do it well. And I would yell at them, and my coach, Bob Harris at that time, who was a referee, funny enough, also a police officer, he would get on me and say, you can't yell at the referees. He's like, you're one, because you're not saying the right things anyway. So you're yelling at them incorrectly. He goes, but if you're going to yell at them, you need to go take the class. So either you be quiet or you go take the referee course. So yeah, I where other people might have started because they knew there was money involved, I started because I was like, fine, I want to know how to properly yell at somebody.
There you go.
But yeah, very quickly you realize, one, you learn the game from a different angle, and you kind of really do appreciate the laws a little bit better, which also made me probably a bad advocate for anyone who refereed me, including my college days, like the John Wieners and Heitzmas, who had to refer me, and Zoom Stemples and Joe McNuss. I would yell at them too. And that's funny. That's how I kind of got got identified. But I then quickly learned that you can make money from it, right? Back in 1999, 10 years old, you weren't able to work in any other capacity. And to go do a U6 or U7 game and get paid $15 to $20 for those 30 minutes and then go hang out with all the concession stand people and, get all the free nachos and, sour punch and airheads that you wanted, like, that was a bit of a no-brainer. We lived very close to the fields as well. I could walk to the fields. So my parents, that was one way that they were able to allow us to be able to play soccer while they worked, was that we were able to walk to the soccer field, so they didn't have to worry about transportation. And that's really kind of how we started, was, wanting to yell at people, keep them accountable. And then I learned you can make money, and I was on the fields all the time. And it just kind of took off from there. And it was probably the one thing that did, obviously the finances helped. There's something very, very empowering about being able to make money yourself. And I didn't come from, I came from a very socioeconomically disadvantaged family. Basically another fancy way to say poor. But I didn't know it. Great family, right? They loved us. So we had no idea we were poor, except we just didn't answer the phones when they called.
There you go.
But it was very empowering to be able to assist and help my parents making money to be able to pay for clothes. If I want to go to the movie theaters with my friends, buy my first car, right? So that was kind of more of an empowering thing to be able to support my family and help them, and once in a while help out with groceries. So for me, that was kind of one of the biggest motivations, was it showed me that, I could financially, help the family, as well as, importantly, if I did a good job on a game. I think it was probably one of the, catalysts in my life, was that nobody cared that I was Hispanic or that I was a female. All they cared was that I actually cared about the game and I did best. So I did my best job. So I was 15, 16 years old, and it was U18 recreational at the time. But for me, those were the hardest games, right, that I was refereeing. And U18 recreational, where both coaches asked if I could be the center referee on their game for the final, which was kind of one of those things that, having a family that believed in the American dream, that you can be anything you want to be, and being told that since I was young, right? Like, there was things in the referee world that lent towards that theory, and continue to promote that in my life, was that just if you work really hard, people will recognize it and give you the opportunities and chances, even without me realizing there was a bunch of barriers.
Right.
Prevent it. So that's kind of all of between 10 to 18, 19. That was, a kind of a mixed bag. So when people try to figure out who I am, I think it's kind of easy once you know where I came from, why I am who I am today.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. Interesting. So it's funny, because I've heard a handful of people that have gotten into officiating because of the, okay, put your money where your mouth is idea, right? Like, get out here and do this, or at least know what you're talking about, that kind of thing. So it's interesting, and I'm sure you see this as you work with officials in Florida and elsewhere. The motivations are different. All sorts. It's like education. You're trying to figure out what's going to help flip the switch for people to help them progress and move forward. But it's different for everyone. So as you hear their story, you have to kind of figure out what it's going to be that's going to be the motivating factor to take us to the next level. And so with that in mind, what was that for you as you started to move upward in that journey? What was that journey like? Talk about that process a little bit, as you then, you had a very successful working that, the recreational, and then obviously it kind of, for lack of a better term, exploded, right? There was a lot more opportunities that came through officiating.
Yeah, I think, and this is paramount, even like in Florida, and I know it doesn't only exist here in Florida, I know it exists everywhere, is there's a lot of, whether it's lack of information or it could be from both sides, right? The referee not realizing or taking more initiative to understand that there's more than just back then a grade 8. or a
Right.
grassroots badge nowadays, is knowing that you can accelerate and you can increase your badge level experience, et cetera. So there's a little bit on that, but at the same time, also communication from SRCs and US soccer as well, knowing that you can climb the ladder, right? And historically,
Right.
not now, but systemically. So I had no idea. If you asked me my grade back then, I would tell them I'm in 10th grade. I would tell you I'm in 11th grade. I had zero clue that there was an 8765 national candidate, like zero idea whatsoever. Every course I took, nobody ever explained that to us, right? I would always flip to the back of the laws of the game because you used to get them handed in person to you. And I always look at the FIFA list and I still had no idea what it was. I just look at people's names. I'm like, oh, they must be dead. Like I had no idea that was
Right.
I thought that was just like some people that did some really cool things and were passed away and they're in a Hall of Fame. Like I had no idea. So I think kind of to your point of trying to identify why people are getting involved and taking that next step. Those are two things. So like the first one probably out of the gate, as everyone knows, is everyone wants to make money out of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once you kind of find that initiative or that drive for an individual, right, there's an encouragement of saying, hey, if you continue to excel your skills, you get identified, you'll be put on harder games, you'll be put on adult games, you'll be putting on travel games. And I know in Florida, someone just told me they did the U15 girls center and they got paid $95. And I was like, holy smokes, that's a lot of money. Like I'm about to come out of retirement. But right, if money is a driving factor, there's a good explanation as to why you should continue your education and training and development so that you get assigned the harder games. I know we have a ref shortage right now, so some people are like, does it matter? I'm going to get assigned those games anyways. Yes and no. It kind of depends upon whether you respect the craft. But that's one way to kind of climb it if money is a driving motivational factor. Obviously becoming a regional referee, getting exposure. I know in Florida we have lots of opportunities with preseason for every pro and semi-pro team, and international games. So, getting on those games, right? And there's more money in those games. So if that's money's a motivating factor, then there's an opportunity. It's just a matter of informing people. If it's kind of more like me where, money was helpful, but I was more there because I truly loved it. When I turned 18, 19, and I started playing collegiate soccer in Palm Beach Atlantic in West Palm Beach, I knew nothing about it either. I just kind of kept it as a side gig. It was the best job for a collegiate soccer player because you get to pick your own schedule, right? So I knew my game schedules. I knew when I could. I knew when I could do high school during the week and balance it with practices. So it allowed me to make money that was more than what my friends would make as a bartender, et cetera. I would argue now it's even more money than what a bartender would make. And still allowed me to be in the game, the sport that I loved, and be able to. I really enjoy working with people, especially funny enough when they're really angry, diffusing situations. But for me and for kind of quite a bit of other people, right? So we have some collegiate and semi-pro players reaching out right now, and it's a way of how do I continue to stay in the game once my playing career is done. And Silvio Petrusco just recently, I think it was last year, him and I were talking, an MLS referee just retired from Canada. And was a former FIFA referee, really put in good words. His dad was a FIFA referee as well, and a professional player. And he kept reminding Silvio, that you can play till you're about 35, right? You kind of usually peak at that point, right? Mm-hmm. There's some people have longevity, but for the majority, he's like, or you can continue to officiate like Simon was from the World Cup final. And he's, I think, 44, 45 years old, right? Like, your refereeing career, usually when you peak at the highest, meaning some of the best games, whether it's MLS finals or that's Champions League finals or World Cups, you're usually in your early to mid 40s. So that was one thing that got me thinking once I got introduced to FSR back in the day, and Joe Mickna, Nancy Lay, and Zoom Semple, and Greg Watson, and people like that, was the reminder that at that time, women's professional soccer, WPS, had just folded. NWSL had not yet started. So there was a gap. So if I wanted to continue playing, there was no place for me to play except for, I wouldn't even argue with semi-pro, just like adult professional soccer kind of in the summer. Obviously zero money in that. So and I wanted to be a lawyer. So there was kind of a hard justification as to why I do that. But it was a reminder for them. They said, hey, like if you, and I got identified during college by US Soccer as well, that if you want to continue, you can continue down this path, and that might give you the opportunity to potentially make it to the Women's World Cup one time, or referee international soccer or professional soccer. So that's really was my motivation. And for maybe other people who say, hey, like, I want to be on that screen. Hey, I want to be the person nitpicked on flaws in front of everyone and have your clip, right? In a clip analysis, right? Not that we go there for those reasons, but that was one of my driving motivations when I took that next step, was saying, hey, cool, I love the game. I love being around it. I love the people involved in the organization, and let me see what I can do with it. So that was kind of my next trigger, but depends on what but I think it gives you that opportunity to stay in the game. And if you want to make money, you can make money too.
Yeah, absolutely. So what were some of the highlights as far as when you progressed? So some of the doors were kind of unlocked based on your performance and how you were progressing and moving up the ladder, so to say. So you were able to achieve quite a bit of things while you were on the field. So talk about some of those experiences. I know that we could talk for hours about all the experiences that you've had, lessons learned and things like that, but maybe some of the high points or low points or funny points along that way.
Yeah. I think kind of, I want to say, right. We always say, right. Control the controllables is an easy one, right? But there truly is a significant amount of luck to a certain extent in this officiating world. It's like a player, right? If you're getting scouted as a player, what's going to make you stand out over the 500 other people looking for collegiate scholarships or whatever that also play med, right? What's going to make you stand out? And sometimes, yes, you control the controllables, your fitness, your knowledge of the games, your training, your awareness, your clip analysis, but that controllable needs to be in an opportunity to have access where you're on a game and maybe someone's passing by. I remember kind of the little spark of luck for me was I was at a Disney tournament. It was like a Disney adult tournament they used to have in January, and they put me on like the over 60s or over 50. I can't remember. Carlos Valderrama and his brother were on the team at that time. So it was funny because like I didn't care. Like I cared, but I didn't care. Right. Yeah. And it was a kind of a smaller side field. No, it was a regular size field. And right, like when you're 18, 19, trying to tell 50-year-olds what to do, right? Like they don't care about yellow cards or red cards, right? They're more than willing to kick each other. They're still fit enough. And they were all ex-pros and you still are developing managing skills. I'm pretty sure I just did a lot of yelling and running around, but, I guess maybe because I was trying to, I'm very proactive in officiating. I'd rather not have to do paperwork at the end if I can help it. Very proactive thing. I remember Herb Silva walking by and seeing me, and that was that little spark. And now that I do it where I have to go and identify officials, it's amazing how you can walk onto a field and someone can pop like that, or someone can not pop like that, right? And you might only have 2-3 minutes of my time or 2-3 minutes of whoever's time. And thankfully I sparked a catalyst in Herb Silva. And then that's kind of where I started getting invited to certain things when Alpha Clonitis and Brian Hall and Paul Tamburino were in charge. And so I would always say, like, during that time period, mine was a little different because I had been identified by U.S. Soccer super, super early by a bit of a kind of luck of a trade. Our SRA back then, Joe Michna, knew what he was doing. He was a past FIFA AR, and he understood product placement, right? He got his referees here. He flew people in and allowed us to perform in front of these individuals who can continue our career. And so I got some really incredible opportunities in my early 20s to be able to kind of launch my career. That being said, one of the things that I always regret is because I think since I was so young, right, you talk about experience and wisdom and maturity, is that I was just used to climbing. Like I never found myself at a decline. It was always climb until that I was finally able to get the FIFA badge. When you turn 25, that's when you can get a FIFA badge. So until I finally turned 25, they were able to hand me, and you have to turn 25 before January 1st, which is really annoying. So I had to wait another year. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm the same person as I was last year, but it is. I was climbing through the whole progression of it and didn't really get much of a backslide. And I think that, there's some positives with that, but the negatives, it didn't allow me to appreciate the moments, I guess. And it didn't allow me to truly appreciate not just the game moments, but the achievements. I always kept looking further and further. I was never satisfied. And there is, pros and cons for it, right? Just hunger and appetite. But when you can't appreciate the moment, like I remember Karen Apt was the one who would do this, and she would ask for, funny enough, they don't have ticket stubs anymore. Everything's electronic, but they used to have ticket stubs, and she collected everyone from every international game that she did. I never did that. I couldn't tell you how many international games I do. I don't know if U.S. Soccer has those records, right? I couldn't tell you how many international games I've done. I can't tell you how many times I refereed Japan or England or Spain or Brazil or Australia. Like I can't, because it was, for me, it was just like, okay, cool. I'll just do them again next year, and I'll do them again next year. So if there's one word of advice I give to any of the officials, is to really appreciate that moment, especially when you get those setbacks. So I didn't start experiencing any setbacks until after I had my daughter, which was a choice of mine, knowing that I was putting everything at risk. Because at that time period, women were not, I wouldn't say welcome back. They just weren't given a second opportunity to come back. Those who had children never returned back to FIFA, or those who are making decisions just assumed that women didn't want to come back. I know one woman, I won't name her name because I don't know if she wants that, but she wasn't able to come back because her child had medical issues. And so that's a different story, right? That was her choice versus someone else making a choice for them. So it wasn't until I came back, and it was more of like physical, like tearing stuff and all that stuff that I was struggling from coming back from. But I did come back, but not able to excel to the next level. That it was one of those setbacks that really put more of everything into perspective, that when you live your entire 20s having refereed professional soccer and international soccer at the highest levels, and gone to FIFA events, like, it makes you lose perspective of what it is that you've achieved. So as opposed to someone who's had to work, my husband's had to work his entire career, and it wasn't until he was 35 he was really given a real opportunity. So we were kind of like the reverse. That's one thing I would always kind of really strongly encourage people, is to appreciate the moment, appreciate the climb, and more importantly, understand that, anything worth achieving isn't easy. So, you're going to have those setbacks, you're going to have those tears, and you're going to have, the end of it is really, it's just a journey. There is no destination. There is no end, because you never know where this world's going to take you, AKA what I'm doing right now. Like, never would I ever, even 3 years ago, would I think I'd be where I'm at right now.
Right. Well, I want to touch briefly on, you talked about, and I think this is a conversation that happens quite a bit, especially with seeing at the previous World Cup, where we've seen the place of females getting opportunities at the same level that men are in the men's game. Are we on the right track as far as continue to provide opportunities for females officials? Are we finally able to see that we're not looking at gender, we're looking at the quality of whether or not they can perform at that level, and that's our defining factor? Are we on the right track?
We are definitely on the right track. And I feel questions from people all the time, who are saying like, well, anytime they put a woman in there, that means they're taking a spot from a guy. And when you look at it that perspective, it looks completely skewed, right? What we're really saying about is what we're looking at. And this is the whole point about, right? If football is the beautiful game and it's supposed to be blind from racism to gender sexism, right, to political side, apparently supposed to be neutral to that side, right, to like sexual identity, etc. All you want, especially from an official standpoint, all you want is the best person covering your six, who's on your line, who's giving you that information. And what, we're talking to some people, some of the trailblazers that were even ahead of my time. And many of us are just blown away that we've had any women we didn't think we would ever see a woman at a men's World Cup, let alone doing anything past group stages, let alone even taking the field, as opposed to just being a fourth official or reserve AR.
Right.
And for the simple fact that there was a systemic barrier. Even I remember Major League Soccer, there was plenty of qualified women back in the day who could have refereed Major League Soccer, but we're told the league's not ready yet. The players aren't ready yet. It's like, what are they ready for? Like, all they care, like, they don't care. They care if you're good or you're bad. So there were all of these obstacles and barriers and psychological things that just prevented women who could perform at those levels being able to officiate at those levels, right? And that's where that term was. As soon as you got the FIFA badge, it turned into a pink badge, and all you could referee was women's soccer, because they wouldn't let you in the men's game without even giving you an opportunity, even though you had to climb up the men's game up to NASL to get the FIFA badge. So you've already proved that you can referee at the best in second division men's, but then it's we put you to this side. So seeing this, and not just in the Women's World Cup, which obviously is such a paramount fixture because it's the biggest, but seeing it in all domestic soccer throughout the throughout the world, right? Obviously Major League Soccer But you talk about City A, right? Them having women, all women trio just recently, Coppa Italia, Brazil's been doing quite a bit. So South America has, Europe has implemented more, right? When you have Stephanie Frapper and her other colleagues, et cetera, like Katerina Mansul, all of those individuals have performed at the highest level on the women's side and have done the finals and are now breaking into being able to prove themselves at the men. So this World Cup cycle was just that. When we talk about equity, right, we're not talking about equality. We're talking about equity. Equality is saying, here you guys go, this is the same share, right? And equity is saying, hey, systemically, since the beginning of time, like women have started way back here. So we need to kind of help them get a little bit to this level. And once we get to this level, then all you guys, right? And that's what we're seeing right now is, kind of that climb. And honestly, tip of the hat to an American, Carrie Seitz, who's in FIFA right now and head of the FIFA women's refereeing. Much credit, and obviously the advocates and allies who support her, and specifically FIFA, who continue to support her initiatives and drive, have really opened the doors for those conversations, because those conversations only happen at the table behind closed doors, where the officials have no control. And she would never acknowledge it, but she is the reason why many of these qualified women have had an opportunity when a lot of us thought they never would have an opportunity in our lifetime. So it's great to see leaps and bounds is transitioning with women's soccer in the overall picture of women's football, showing that if you show it on TV, people actually watch it. There's millions of views. There's, economic, like everyone's like, women, no one wants to watch women's soccer. I'm like, that's because you don't have it on. Like you can't legitimately watch something that's not on TV. So that growth is growing, and I'm really excited for this next World Cup cycle, right? Because then it's these first 4 years, and that's where the women will finally get their opportunities, those who have qualified, to go to the 17 men's, the 20 men's, right? The FIFA Club World Cup. So you have Katie going into the FIFA Men's Club World Cup, right? Katie Nesbitt, or AR, from the United States. So this is now, for me, like before, it's like we're shattering ceilings. Like 2023 and on is like, we're here, we're establishing ourselves, and we're on the stage. Everyone's on a blank page. So that's my perspective on all that. I think we're definitely heading in the right. And, there's some incredible women who are breaking those chains that are people you want to root for and support. Because not only do they work hard and they're passionate, et cetera, and they're good at their trade, they're just genuinely really good people, like Katie Nesbitt, like just an incredible individual. So it's not hard to want to root for their success, and then be the representative of all womankind in this world.
It's wonderful. It's great to hear. And I think it's fun to watch as just a lover of the game, but obviously a lover of officials and seeing how that progresses. But then it also opens doors for those of us working with grassroots referees across the United States. It allows for a lot of our officials, especially females, to go, wait a second, I can see someone who looks like me working at that highest level, which just, again, captures their imagination, hopefully, and says that this is a place where you're welcome. We want you to succeed. We've got your back. There's doors that are open for you. So very exciting, very exciting. And so as far as that's concerned, working with officials in your state and as part of the Florida Soccer Referee Program, can you talk about that? You guys are quite honestly, you guys are killing it. It seems like through social media, where everybody's like, look at what Florida's doing. And I'm like, yeah, I know they got beaches too. They've got us beat in Kansas, but no. But,
which I don't have a beach referee yet. I'm working on that program, but we all laugh in Florida. We all jumped. It's a completely new administration, and we're all laughing because we're literally trying to build the plane while we're flying it. So it's nice. Thank you for saying that. Somebody else said that at the coaches convention. And I'm like, really? Because like we're all sitting there, a little dog with fire all over the place. Like that's how we all feel.
Yeah, it's fine.
On the leadership team. And we're just cracking up because we're like, I'm like, and maybe that's probably why, because we're all kind of the team I compiled together, incredible human beings. But it's funny because like we want everything to have been done yesterday, right? And I do always, it's funny, I put a post yesterday because I do feel like I'm running out of time, right? It's a 2-year tenure, pending on the, the presence of the youth and the adult for wanting to renew it, but slash my sanity. But like you feel like you're running out of time because this is our first real full year of knowing what the spring season looks like, what a summer season looks like, what a fall pre-registration looks like, what a spring registration thing is. And, we've really, flipped our organization upside down because it wasn't, at least in my opinion, servicing our membership base from the grassroots referees, which is the bottom of the iceberg, which is the majority of the officials who we want to help, right? Everyone always says the regionals and nationals, et cetera, back in the day, state all got all the love and attention, and they did. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but at the same time, that's ignoring 90% of your population. So
right.
We kind of flipped it backwards. It's not saying we've neglected them. We're just like, you guys are big boys and big girls, like take care of your assessments. Like we're not chasing people.
Right.
There's an element of professionalism, because I know when I give a green light to, Alan Kelly or Mark Geiger or Joe Fletcher and say, hey, take a look at these people, it's because I know they're off the field is as good as they're on the field. And it's a whole well-rounded person. Because trust me, I've been stuck. You don't want to be an official stuck with another official for 4 or 5 days. You don't like the person because they're just not a good person. That's the worst thing. Or 50 days. That's happened to me too. So you'd rather be stuck with someone that you enjoy working with and has your back, right? It doesn't mean you have to be best friends. Just, the person has, is a good person. So anywho, thanks for that. We definitely feel like we're all, and then we changed the whole leadership structure. So it's not 1 or 2 people controlling all the decisions either. So it really has gone back down to, dividing the state into a legitimate 4 quadrants. I love it because we have A, B, C, and D. A is like the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. I call that the birth child of CONCACAF and CONMEBOL. Like Miami is its own piece. And then I'll just lead to area D, which is our Panhandle area, which is closer to Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana. And obviously their needs and the drive for soccer over there is far less than American college football. So numbers are looking there, and then our referees going back and forth between states, right? That is like, okay, perfect, fine, but we have to create something that supports those officials. And that might be supporting officials as well from all our border states so that we create a strong base there, because it's easier for them to go to Georgia and Alabama than it is to come for State Cup Final Four, which is near Orlando. That's a longer drive than to go to State Cup in Georgia. So it's just balancing our personalities in our states and realizing and reminding ourselves that, the people who live in that area know better than state leadership does. So why are we making decisions at the top that are affecting how they're implemented at the bottom that can have unforeseen consequences just because we can't fully appreciate the climate or, the needs of that area. So we've restructured the entire administration team from state leadership to local leadership, and then our referee performance initiatives and our just different educational programs, et cetera. But like I said, we're running out of time. A year has already passed. And if it was up to me, like all of this would have been done. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, but chipping away at it, it's a process, and there's growing needs and concerns and things. And as you guys, I'm sure a lot of this is assessing what those are and then trying to create the initiatives right to meet those needs, which includes the soccer community as a whole in that area, but also just the needs of the individual referees that are working there. So I'm sure that's a huge part of what you're doing, and breaking the state up into those quadrants, I'm sure, is extremely helpful. Big, wide sweeping for just one giant area is probably not the most helpful. Would that be fair to say?
100%. 100%. Yeah, you can't, right? So it's like, if we have Danny Von Miami. He's incredible. He knows the culture and knows the players, and he's just that right personality for that fit, right? No one's going to mess with him, but he's loving and he loves the refs, right? And I always call him my personal bodyguard. This man is just built, right? And then you have Sean Michael in our Orlando area. He's just super, a team player and can just get along. And there's some difficult individuals in that area. I'll say that on record. Y'all know who you are. And as the ability to, change the negative to the positive. And so, when you hit in the head, I mean, we, are relooking at, and, to try to remind myself, it's not that we're taking old programs and just tweaking them. There was no program. So we're completely creating brand new programs And like I said, it's the word academy was thrown around a lot in Florida historically in the past. And that's where that negative connotation comes from, where only academy, which were state referees that were specifically earmarked, right, and anointed, would be the only ones who would get support. Everyone else would be thrown out. And there are two values in my life that I pulled over to FSR, two core values, and that's respect and access. So a lot of the things that I do, as long as they fall in those two buckets, respect and access, which are kind of big buckets, right? Those are things I put my energy and focus on. And in FSR, we have the same thing, respect and access. And we focus first on our ecosystem and respecting each other internally. And that's from assigners to refs, refs to assigners, admin to assigners, assigners to admin, right? And there's, when you're trying to undo years of systemic issues, it doesn't happen overnight, and you can't understand why people are biting each other's heads off when you're like, we're all looking at the same thing. And yes, increase the number of referees, but increase the quality of the officials as well. Those are simultaneous. If not, then you have referees letting players get hurt, and then referees frustration, then that leads to assault and abuse, and then, go to the core of the issue. And then the access issue, to kind of your point, and that's why we revised our referee performance initiatives. And have broken that down to 11 to 14-year-olds as their futures program, right? In-house recreational soccer only, not a full USSF license, no uniforms, just a shirt. That pilot program is starting in the spring with a full launch in fall. And that helps with a mentor to train them on these very smaller games where you're just telling kids how to rethrow the ball in. Like, you're not really going into studs and tackle and talking about FIFA considerations with them. And then hopefully getting them to love the game from a referee perspective. So when they hit 14, it's a conversion into a full USSF referee, right? Which is our referee education development instruction group, ongoing continuing education outside of just the one time where they see the US online modules, which we respectfully, including myself, like, you don't fully pay attention. Any online education, you kind of just like do that stuff. It's reality, right? But in-person field trainings are required here in Florida for referees with 6 or less years of experience. 7 and up get an option for webinar or in-person, but they have a 2-year, every 2 years, they have to do at least one in-person field training session. And that's to open up their mind and perspective of saying, it's not just going and checking off a mark. Like, this is a professional license. So that's our ready group. And we have their advanced referee initiatives. And those are for those regional referees and above who want to get to the point of national referee. And one of the other biggest focuses I have is not letting go of our national referees in the sense of continuing to support them. Because historically, once somebody becomes a national ref, the state forgets about them, says you're with U.S. soccer. Well, if you're in that weird little limbo world where you're not yet picked up by a pro, but you're a national ref, you still want to help support those individuals, because importantly, many of our officials from FIFA to pro to national referees give back to the state. And so that's just something, you can't quantify the goodwill and their education experience, and to give it back. And to your point earlier, seeing is believing. So when you see somebody who's not far removed age-wise or skill-wise, it helps inspire you a little bit more, instead of me saying, well, when I was younger, right? Like, no one cares when I was younger. That was like 4 years ago, right? These people are actively doing it. So those are the people that help inspire and, support the program collectively.
It's wonderful to see. And there's a lot of referees that are fortunate to be a part of that. So wonderful stuff. Keep up that great work. I want to transition slightly to, as we start to kind of wrap up our conversation, but this is a whole can of worms, as you found, like you said, you found yourself in a new position or something. And I think you've been in this with 3 years. Did you say 3 years now for rules law analyst? Let's call it correctly.
Yeah, I thought it was just going to be a one-time thing for Fox in 2019. I was like, well, it'll be a one-time thing. It'll be fun. It's just a different opportunity to kind of do some of the stuff when that kind of fell under the respect and access buckets. But yeah, end of 2020, right? World crashed when I was like, fine, I'll just come back. World crashed, nothing to officiate. Then Champions League starts up. And the rights got sent to CBS. CBS acquired the rights. That's a better way to say it. And so the producer at Fox reached out to me, and I just figured it was just going to be a fun little gig. I didn't fully appreciate the gravity of UEFA Champions League. I've watched it, but I've never followed it as it's European football. Not that I don't care for it. It's just, it wasn't the game I was refereeing. So yeah, I just thought it was going to be like 2 months, right? Because we were covering the finals of it because it had been postponed due to COVID. So I thought we were just covering for like 2 months. So I was like, oh, that was fun. Like 2021 World Tour opened back up again. And then I didn't realize that they wanted me to stay on and continue to cover Champions League and some of their other assets like Serie A. So yeah, then 2021 took off and 2022 took off, and here I am in 2023, covering primarily for CBS and something else I cannot announce yet, but hopefully it should be coming out next couple.
That's exciting. So what is that? I mean, obviously there's the professional side about what you get to be a part of and the things, but just from a personal aspect, what has that been like for you to be a part of this? That's incredible.
It's it's going back to being able to appreciate the moment. That's something I'm taking in the second half of my life, right? The 20s was all officiating and professional, et cetera. The 30s have turned into taking those skills and experience. And I was a litigation attorney for about 11 years. I just went of counsel, 11, 12 years, and taking the God-given talents I was provided and had the benefits of having, and saying, you know, for me, one of my biggest pet peeves was, and I would always watch my game clips or other clips and put it on mute, because the analyst, with all due respect, would just completely break down a play incorrectly according to law, right? And we as officials would be completely destroyed. And it really broke my heart, because I'm saying these are the people that are educating our young soccer community, right? We're not as as grown up as the Europeans or Central America, right? Like, they've had soccer. It's their number one sport for all time, right? This is like our number 4 or 5 sport. So it always kind of broke my heart that, whether I care less personally about myself, but colleagues are getting destroyed for calls that were appropriate, that when this opportunity opened up, and I struggled quite a bit in 2019 to accept it. I think it was like the day before announcement, I still hadn't accepted the position for Fox, because I knew I would lose my FIFA badge for it, right? And I'm like, well, I worked my entire life with this FIFA badge, and I want to go to the Women's World Cup. Like, you know, why would I sacrifice this? And funny enough, everyone in my non-referee world were like, you're an idiot. Like, go take the thing. So it was just kind of funny how my different worlds were complete juxtaposed to one another. But this opportunity has been incredibly enlightening. One, because it allows me to truly bridge, I call it bridge the gap between the referee world and the rest of the football world, right? So for me, there's obviously coaches, players, fans, and referees. There's 4 legs to the chair. And historically, this 4th leg, like, our soccer community has been like lopsided, right? Because no one pays attention to the referee world. And I've been part of some U.S. soccer meetings, and there were some U.S. soccer coaches there, and it was just a conglomerate of people, including some referee people. And they're like, oh, you guys over there in ref world. I'm like, what is ref world? And do I really want to be living in this isolated island when we're talking about what does football expect? What is football's understanding? Like, the fact that we're like isolated over there, we sit there and we all break down these plays, and we're like the fractionalized, like Radford's play in Man U the other day on the offside, not offside, which technically by law is correct. So I defended it, but I also didn't look at Twitter for the next 72 hours because I knew no one was going to like my response. But football didn't want it, but the laws required it, right? Like, those kinds of things. It's like, how do we bring us all together so that we're all at the table? And referees are not at any of the tables. They're not at the tables of making decisions. They're not at the tables of kind of the future. And that's why we have referee issues on shortages / education as well, collectively and systemically throughout. And it's a lot of it's just historical, based upon, how soccer originated in the United States, all as a nonprofit volunteer kind of a thing. In the reality, it's now $1 billion industry. So, it's like the federal courts, they didn't move to Microsoft Word till 5 years ago. It used to be Microsoft Perfect. Yeah. Tell me about that, right?
Nice.
So I always equate us to like federal government in that respect, that we're so slow. And we need to evolve, and we need to grow into our shoes, and it's okay to grow up. And I think people resist change, but this has allowed me to have those communications with people who are non-referees, but are in the soccer world, who have the ability to make changes, because we can't make changes in the ref world because we're not at the table, where I can open up their eyes and explain on camera or off camera. A lot of this stuff happens off camera. This is what we need. This is how we need to grow. This is how we can support the game. And that is allowing, kind of back to that access point, it's allowing us to have a voice on the table through people who want to champion our cause. Like, I'd have to, put, like, for example, if I say someone who sat on the committee who championed the referee's cause during bylaw revisions, go figure, I had a bunch of bylaw revisions, and I wasn't allowed to speak at the thing and explain to people why these were. I just, some technicality, rules, orders, lady wouldn't let me speak. But this gentleman came out and put his, credibility on the line to say, hey, I'll speak on behalf of Christina, and like we work together. And that's what we need, because when referees don't have a voice on the games that they're integral on to help develop and protect the players and allow the game to flow, then that's a serious issue. And, having this ability to have a voice for bridging the gap from the viewers to the game. And then honestly, the pundits and the analysts, like, it's great. I'll get texts from time to time. And it's like, hey, I broke down this play like this. I don't think it's right. Can you take a look at it? And I'll be like, hey, here's what you need to know. Da, 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 da. Right. It makes them better. It makes our viewers better. It makes us better, right? Because we are good. We are really, really good. If you take a look at how many U.S. officials, I forgot how many games it was. I have the stats somewhere, but we were on like 26 games, I think it was, in the World Cup, had a U.S. official on it in some capacity. Like before, they always used to say, we want Premier League referees coming over and doing MLS. Now everyone's like, we want MLS referees coming over here and doing Premier League, right? Like, we're young, we're scrappy, we're American, and we are crushing the game when it comes to the referee side. And the other side of our football world in the United States needs to recognize that, and not full fault to themselves. They have to focus on coaching, player development, getting people to turn on the TV and to buy in and make it profitable. But someone's got to be the Lorax among the trees, crying for the trees. So that's kind of like, I spoke to my daughter the other day. So I'm like, I'm a Lorax. So that's kind of what I am. I'm just a Lorax.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, it's good work, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to see someone advocating on, even just on Twitter, like, oh, I agree with her. Thank you for saying something, instead of, adding a voice of reason or a voice of actual law language to some of the conversation is super helpful. So that's good stuff. I want to be respectful of your time, and thank you so much again for being with the Check Complete podcast today. If you could go back, I love asking this question to our guests, but if you could go back, knowing everything that you know now, what would you tell first month, first week, first day Christina she begins to embark on her referee journey?
I think it's a little bit of it, but I think it's like and it was pretty cool. So I got the finals for the Women's College Cup coming out of COVID. So it was like the 2020, but it was 2021. It was weird.
Right.
And that was one of the first games I was able to smell the grass or appreciate the moment. And that was advice by the past rules editor who had passed away. And him and I talked like the day before the final or whatever. Nice, great guy. And he was just like, never forget to smell the grass. I was like, where were you when I started refereeing?
Yeah.
Right? So, and it was hilarious because they have a poker photo of me literally smelling the grass. I actually love the smell of grass, whether it's cut or just lying in the field or whatnot. So, if I could go back to that, it's, smell the grass. And I knew, not to take this referee world, right? I've seen a lot of people lose their identity in it. And I've seen a lot of people lose family when they climb the ladder, right? Lose family members, friends, etc. But it's to appreciate every single one of those moments. And so easy to use the word balance, right? To balance it, because this is similar to my legal world. It's funny. I had two very jealous mistress, right? That's what we call the legal world, jealous mistress. She'll take everything you can give her, right? Or him, right? And the soccer world is the exact same thing. They'll take everything. And at one point they'll make you feel, and it happens. And this is where we got to fix the toxic side of it. Make you feel like if you don't say yes, you're dead to them, right? They're going to move on. And they're like, there's 100 people behind you. And that's not investing in a relationship with someone who is like a player, right? If they threw Rose Lavelle out in college when she kept having and continues to have her hamstring issues, she wouldn't score the game-winning goal in the Women's World Cup, right? And captain recently. So it's understanding, appreciating that referees are like they're athletes. There's a continuous history there. So for me early on, it was, like I said, appreciate the moment. I always kept saying, what's next? I was barely done accomplishing something. And I'm like, what's next? What's next? It wasn't cool. This is awesome. Let me relish at this moment. Let me realize I'm an athlete. If I'm injured, don't go back full throttle, right? Like take the proper steps, whether it's coming back from a C-section or coming back from a high hamstring injury or ACL surgery, is like always try to come back super, super quick. Because I felt like if I don't say yes, they're going to move on, which what did happen when I came back, tried to come back from my baby. They just said, don't worry about it. We're moving on. And I'm like, oh my God, there's 2 more years left.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm hoping that psychology is going away. And I think it is. I've seen some instances where it is at the highest levels, but appreciate the moment and just know that if you're true to yourself and to your values and you're a good person, like, and the fact we have a ref shortage and we'll always take a really good ref, the world will work out in a way that you can never envision or dream, because everything I'm doing now is nothing that was ever on my little sheet of when I was supposed to have a baby, when I was supposed to go to the world. I had it all written out. It was super weird. So I've kind of given up on that, because the world takes you in places that you're supposed to go for a reason that you may not know at that moment, but you'll realize retroactively.
Yeah. Good words for anybody along their journey, but especially those at the front end. So this has been a wonderful conversation, Christina. I want to say thank you again so much on behalf of our whole team and those that tune into our podcast. We really appreciate it to hear about your story, to hear about what you're doing with the Florida Soccer Referee Program, all the opportunities you're providing officials there, and then your work as a law analyst. So we're excited to continue to see as you contribute to that space. So I'll give you the final word. If there's anything that you feel like you need to say or you're not going to be able to sleep tonight, you got to say this to the Check Complete podcast.
I would say listen to the Check Complete, follow them on social media.
There you go.
Listen to the good stuff they're doing, because there's a lot of people doing really good stuff in this space. So thanks for having me. And yeah, thanks for you guys for all your time and your efforts and bridging the gap between our world and the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Christina.
This episode is brought to you in part by TFIT 365.
The motto is take it. So get better every single day and take it.
This has been episode 24 of the Check Complete podcast. I feel like we should have been named Christina for this episode too. It would have just fit.
Absolutely.
Just 4 Christinas. I don't know.
She's a legend.
Anyway, they both are. Christina Kramer and Christina Unkel. So thank you to Christina Kramer for another wonderful Coffee with Christina, talking about motivation and identity. And another massive thank you to Christina Unkel for her time. We know you're extremely busy, and so we just are so thankful that you sat down with us to talk about all that we discussed. I mean, all sorts of things going on in the football world, down in Florida and beyond. Tony, thanks for your time. It's always good to see you and chat with you. You are a close friend of the podcast, and you've got some things off the field that you're working on, right?
That's right, yeah. No, thanks for having me, first of all. And yeah, second of all, I'm working on my own personal training, online coaching business. TFIT 365 is the name. You can find me on social media at t.fitness365. So message me. It's in the works, but I've got big things coming for 2023, and the motto is take it. So get better every single day and take it. That's how it is.
So we can say that this episode is brought to you in part by TFIT 365, I guess.
Yeah.
All joking aside, the ground floor investment fee is $1,000, so we will need to see that money before this airs. But we're excited. Yeah, we're excited to help promote what you're doing, which is it's good work. It's good work.
Thank you.
So if you have, make sure you're following us. I mean, sorry to be demanding, but please just do it on Twitter and Instagram at check_complete. On the Facebook, the Book of Faces, we're on there as well. On the YouTubes, like and subscribe.
Right up here?
Sure, or somewhere. I don't know where it'll be, but like the videos, subscribe to our channel, share it with all your friends, everyone you know.
Everyone.
Neighbors, grandmas, grandpas.
Mass emails.
Yes, exactly.
Everyone.
Do that. Share it far and wide. Shout it from the rooftops, okay? And we'd love to hear from you. If there's things that you'd like to hear us talk about on the podcast, guests you'd like for us to interview, subjects you'd like for us to discuss, things like that, we'd love to hear from you. If you do have any negative feedback, this week we're going to give you a couple of options, okay, if you'd like to submit some negative feedback. So if you would like to submit negative feedback, just whichever one is more accessible for you. Okay, so the first one, if you have any negative feedback, you are free to write it on the flag thrown by Ronald Torbert's crew in the 2023 AFC Championship game. That was the personal foul called against the Bengals with 8 seconds left in the game to put the Chiefs into field goal territory. So if you have access to that flag, just jot it on there, send it to them. And then if that's a little bit out of your network or accessibility, feel free to write it on the back of a Spenso Pro referee watch with stoppage time indication on there. We love the Technicolored screen too. Bonus. Right on the back of that, send it to us. We'll be sure to get right on that negative feedback.
Perfect.
Another good episode.
Another great episode. Thanks for having
At
me.
least we think so. Yeah, we think you're great. So thanks for being here, Tony. Thanks again to both Christinas. Stay safe out there. Happy whistling, and we'll see you back here for 25.
Peace.